And about the speakers, we've been building this up, the anticipation and the speaker list, for months, and so I didn't have a chance to post bios. I do need to mention that these titles don't even say even a small fraction of the sort of good work these folks do. We're going to hear from Yasmin first, and yeah, of course, she's localization manager at Sony PlayStation. She's also a native Burmese speaker. She's very active in a Burmese American Women's Alliance and working for democracy in her native country, and she's going to tell us what it's like there and what's going on. And then Brian Kemler, of course, he's project manager, a product manager for Chrome, but he also bootstrapped Gmail and search for Myanmar, and he worked on the Google News Next Billion program. So he's done a lot of interesting things. And Brian has joined us from San Francisco, so we'll be speaking to you from one of those Star Trek screens there. And then Craig will be number 3, and most of you folks know Craig already, and he works on all these really hard languages. He has spoken to us about the Endangered Languages Project. He's spoken to us about Cherokee, and he has been working on a number of projects, and he was in Bhutan as we were trying to finalize the details of this thing, and I'm told they don't have perfect internet access in some of the places he went there, but he was just showing me some great Google Street View from Bhutan. So that was interesting. Love to hear more about that. Aaron Babst, first of all, Aaron has helped IMUG fix up our Facebook page. Thank you. Aaron is program manager for growth at Facebook now, and obviously there's a lot of growth in directions we're going to be talking about. He has also worked on the community localization project there and gave our best attended talk on community localization at Facebook until Netflix decided to steal the show. We haven't had talks that large since 1995, when everybody came just to see a couple of guys surf the web, which was new at the time. And so that was really popular. Aaron also used to work right here at Google on Google Translate. So that is the order we're going to hear from them. As I mentioned, please wait till we can run to you with a mic when you're ready to ask a question. And I think I'm going to let Craig turn off all the stuff that just popped up by itself on his laptop here. Okay?
It's magic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for that introduction. I'm very pleased to start. I'm not going to talk long here, but I wanted to just mention a little bit about how this talk came to be. At one point, maybe 8 months ago, I said to Zoli and perhaps Joe, we had to do something on Burmese. The next I knew, or the next I'm aware of, is that Zoli came to me and says, oh, bringing the internet to Myanmar, that should be a topic we can talk about. So I think he and Joe talked up that title. Well, about 5 months ago, I got panicked thinking I could not represent this well by myself. So I said, who do I know? I met Yasmin and Brian, I've worked with at Google on working to get Google doing Burmese language and support for Myanmar better. And then I heard about Aaron and said, let's make a team. So that's why you're having 4 of us tonight rather than just 1. I hope you'll enjoy the diversity of the talks, some technical, some not technical, but we look forward to your comments and questions afterwards. So Yasmin, you're our first person.
So thank you, Craig. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm really excited because this is my mother tongue and this is my homeland that I'm really emotionally attached to. So a lot of interest, and I really thank you. And, I'm really excited to be here. So this is you have seen this already, participation. Yeah, this is the famous pagoda, Golden Pagoda Shwedagon. And then these are the monks. And when you talk about Burma, there are a lot of pagodas and a lot of monks. So, and then we are bringing internet to Burma. So, I'll just skip that. So it's as you can see that, the Burma is nicknamed Golden Land. So it's located in Southeast, what some of you already know, but I just want to give an overview. Located in Southeast Asia, in the China Peninsula. It's the biggest country in Indochina Peninsula, and it's the size of Texas, neighboring with China, India, Bangladesh, and Laos, and Thailand. And then we have 14 states and division, and then that also will, a lot of languages and a lot of ethnicity. I will get into that later. And the capital is called Naypyidaw. Naypyidaw means like royal capital city. It was military regime chose to, at that time before opening up for democratic reform, they built a city in the middle of nowhere, and that's the capital city now. And population is 54 million, and 55% of them are under 30, so it's a very young nation. And then also father of modern Burma is like a George Washington of Burma is Aung San general. He was a general, movement for the independence, and he was the father of Aung San Suu Kyi, who is the de facto leader of Burma right now. And the name change in 1989, and you might notice that I still call it Burma. So there's some political things. So, now I'm open to calling Myanmar sometime, but, most of the time Burma. And we have rich in resources. It was a rice bowl of Asia. We have a lot of rice production and natural resources and the Burmese rubies. And then you might know that Burmese cats, it's kind of just the name because of between the Siamese and the Persian cat mix. Yeah. So then brief history about modern Burma. It's like it was a British colony in 1824 till 1947. 1948, we got the independence. And then we have a short-lived democracy. And after that, we must know this man. Like we grew up under his, iron fists and iron boots. And so his name is General Ne Win. He was the coup d'etat leader of the Burmese military in 1962. And then I have a lot of fellow Burmese here, so I don't know if they remember about him because during his time, a lot of people also left Burma because of the nationalization and stuff. So his way was Burmese way to socialism, and then he also implemented the very notorious 1982 citizenship law based on ethnicity. Although himself was a Sino-Burmese, he has some Chinese blood, but he's like pure Burmese, Burma for Burmese only. And Burma is a one ethnic group, majority, a lot of ruling people are Burmese, and then there are other minority groups. And then a lot of heavy censorship, xenophobic, and isolation during that time. And then in 1988, there was a democratic movement. A lot of students and the people, they were cracked down by the brutal military regime. And then Aung San Suu Kyi, who was in England before, because she was a scholar, she was married to a British man, and she came back to take care of her mother, her dying mother, and she got involved in politics. And then she won the election in 1990, but the election results were not honored. And then in 1991, she won the Nobel Peace Prize, but she was still under house arrest. And then we also have, like in 2007, the Burmese monk, the peaceful Burmese monk, protested against the military regime, and they were cracked down too. So this man is like, we'll never forget. Something about the Burmese culture. It's like an Indo-Buddhist Chinese culture. And the religion, state religion is Theravada Buddhism. It's a little bit different. Like Chinese are the Maharana, and then Burmese, more like a Theravada. They're minority, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. And then also there was one of the oldest Jewish synagogue in believe it or not, it's in the Muslim neighborhood. And the caretakers were the Muslims. So I read about it in some Jewish magazine. And then New Year's also, we have a water festival in April, and we throw water for 3-4 days, and then there's a New Year. It's the same thing as in Thailand and Cambodia and Laos. It's really fun time. Every April I miss home more. And then the calendars, we have Burmese calendar. We go with like a different calendar. Okay, what is this now in Burmese? Because of every month we have different religious holidays. And then Buddhist prayers are in Sanskrit and Pali. So some of the words we know also come from Sanskrit and Pali. And the dress, I'm wearing a longi. It's a traditional dress for men and women. Men will wear checkered and women will wear patterns and flowery stuff. And the food is similar to Thai food and rice and curry and noodles. We call it khao sui. And I found out in Thailand, khao sui is rice. I know. And we call it's a noodle. And the population, again, is young, but, literacy is very high. Changing the state of internet. So internet was available since 2000. At the beginning, only the very connected people with the military or elites, they get they get access to it. And then the internet cafes were boom, like any third world country. But the cafe owners have to be very vigilant. They have to keep who is using, what is using. Everybody is checking. At that time, when it was first available. And then improvement in the infrastructure, little by little. The government also started changing. So, like from 2014, it was like 2 million, and 2016, you can see 39. It's a big jump. And then one of the things was the price of SIM cards were very expensive. It was out of reach. And then the one before this current regime, there was a military regime. I'll talk about it a little bit later. That president, he was a general, Thein Sein, and he became the civilian president, Thein Sein. During his time, he reduced the price of the SIM card and it became more available. So from like 200 to 1,500 to $1.50. So, like people, it's readily available. And then from like, you can see that it was the fastest growing in Asia. And it's like the number 4 globally after India, China, and USA, that internet, the phone service signed up in 2016. And most of the people go online by mobile. And then Facebook is 60% of the country, they get the news from Facebook. So when you say we don't believe anything on Facebook, it's really true in Burma, don't believe anything on Facebook. And then still, electricity shortages, all kind of stuff is still there. So you can see that this is like everybody walking around with, cell phones. So 90% of the population have access. Before, there was like, people say they don't know what's going on in the next city or next town. But now, they talk about President Trump and American Idol, and my cousins and my relatives it's like, they know more about, all connected now. So it's the changes and reform. So like Joe mentioned that I am the secretary of the Burmese American Women Alliance and support democracy. So I just want to point it out that there are a lot of changes, a lot of reform, but is it really the real reform? So this is, so there was a pseudo-civilian government, Thein Sein. He's in his military attire there. So we have to give him a lot of credit because he not only he reduced the price of the SIM card, he opened up, he released Aung San Suu Kyi after the 15-year house arrest. And in 2012, Aung San Suu Kyi was elected as a member of parliament in the by-election. So things are opening up. And then we had it led up to the historic election in November 8th. We were all excited. We have Facebook pages for, like we're from here, we were campaigning, from here. And then nationally for democracy, Aung San Suu Kyi's party won like a big time. But still, 2008 constitution, that was the constitution written and supported by the military. So Aung San Suu Kyi cannot be the prime minister or president because she was married to a British man who passed away already, but she has 2 sons. One is, I think, a British and one an American. So if you are, you have close relatives who are foreigners, you cannot be the president. So then they created a position called State Council position, and she is the leader. She's traveling everywhere, and she's the leader of Burma, current Burma. But the democratically elected government, but the member of parliament, 25% is still military. So in the parliament, 25% of the military MPs are the military folks still, they are not elected. They are just, selected by the chief of staff. And then military still control the very three important ministries, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Border Control, and Ministry of Interiors, which is like police is under the Ministry of Interior. So this man, the last picture is a Min Aung Hlaing, General Min Aung Hlaing. Or maybe he's the, I don't know, the title in Burmese is very complicated. It's like a great, like a higher than the general. So he is the one who is the, real power. So government is still monitoring. Prior to 2011, they use all kind of software to monitor the internet, block any anti-government and human rights, any pornography, and also foreign media site. But then after that, internet censorship has been reduced, partly free, but people are still afraid. Like some people are, now it's getting better and better, but people still try to self-censor because they don't want to get into trouble. And then Myanmar Communication and Information Technology Organization, some intelligence folks, they still monitor. And then there's a law by 2004 Electronic Transaction Act. And then that has arrested many journalists and many people, especially they will say whoever is like against the military, anti-government, anti-government means not this democratic government, and anti-military, they get arrested. Only one arrest recently was made threatening Dr. Aung San Suu Kyi's life. So this is something that I thought, interesting. Lately, because of the Facebook and everything, social media is used for the hate crime, and there's a lot of problem with the minorities in Burma, and then that's in the news. And these two gentlemen, one was the part of the, like an architect of Burma independence, Mr. Urazak, and the other one, an NLD lawyer, Ukoni, who was recently gunned down in January. She was the advisor to Dr. Aung San Suu Kyi. They are of Muslim faith. So the word kala is used to derogatory to, like somebody who is an Indian origin or somebody with a dark skin. So, and then on the Facebook, there's a lot of, posting with the kala this, kala that, and, derogatory terms. But the kala origin come from something kutala, which is somebody who is doing a good deeds, or kula is like somebody who cross over. Then it started to mean kala. And then the other, words, like we use the chair is a kalatai, and the Indian, like a lentil curry is a kalabe, and then curtain is a kalaga, and then also the habaneros is a kalaodi. So it's like when Facebook banned all these, anything with kala, and then even, like there's so many other things, even as a verb, you can use something. So it's like, I saw a lot of blogs and people say it's a kind of silly and, things like that. So just something, I want to share with that. And then in ethnicity, indigenous community. So government officially recognizes 135 ethnic group, and Bama being the major, and Shan, Karen, Yakai, Mon, Kachin, and then smaller group, also smaller group. And then unrecognized also Anglo-Burmese, Sino-Burmese, Indo-Burmese, and somebody like me is like Afghan, Persian, Burmese, Mon, So believe it or not, when you are in Burma, when you get the ID card, you have to write that. I have cousins are half Japanese, and they have to put Japanese, Burmese, whatever, Afghan, you have to write that ethnicity in your ID card. So languages, I think, other, in general, the majority of people speak Burmese because that's the language that we were taught in school. So 32 million people speak as a first language, and then another 10 million as a second language. Other, languages, Shan, Karen, Mon, all kind of thing. And then another, I didn't bring it, there's another language people are claiming to be, they are ethnic or they are not ethnic, big Rohingya, I think because you hear on the news. So I don't want to get into that, but there are about 1 million Rohingya inside Burma and, refugee camps and stuff like that. So recently, a lot of people are learning Chinese because of the economic power of China and close vicinity. And so these are the different states, 14 states. So expats from Burma, a lot of people are like working refugees in Thai, Bangladesh, Malaysia, and then also immigrants in US. They are because of this due to family sponsorship. And a student, I came as a student and turned into immigrant, H-1B, many years ago. And then refugees and asylum seeker. At one point, I think in the Santa Clara Valley, because my organization and other organization, we worked with the Burmese refugees. They were the second highest after the Iraqis. I don't know if that's true right now. And then professional workforce nowadays that I hear my cousins, they are leaving, they go to Middle East to work or maybe to Malaysia, professional, white collar workforce. And the languages, I speak only like Burmese and English, when, we were there. But then other minority here, a lot of immigrants or refugees, they have other languages. Maybe they might be speaking Karen or Kachin or one of those languages. And then depending on where you are, you learn that if you are a Burmese living in Japan or in Sweden, you learn that, addition to English, Burmese, and that language. I think that's mine.
Super. Hey, Craig, can everybody hear me?
Yes, you're very, very audible. I will drive the slides if you'd like.
Okay, I'm gonna skip over this slide. Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, and I can't see you, so this is a little weird. You can see me. I'm Brian Kemler. Okay, awesome.
I can hear you so well, you don't need to speak any louder. Okay.
I don't know if I can do anything about that other than speak quieter, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've been at Google now going on about 10 years, and about 5 years ago, I took a summer sabbatical to Asia where I had never been. I'd lived in Mexico, traveled all over Latin America, Europe, but I'd never been to Asia. So I was super curious about Asia. I had this kind of time between roles and, did kind of the typical American thing, which was, list out 12 countries I wanted to go to in 8 weeks. And then I figured, that wasn't really going to be any fun. I'm going to just go to a couple of places, and I want to go to places that are really unique and different and on the cusp of something. And I had read a bunch of books about Burma, Myanmar, and it was a very fascinating place to me. And at the time I went there in 2012, very few foreign travelers were going there. Something only like maybe 60,000 foreigners were traveling there on a yearly basis. So I decided to go there, and it was a blast. And I got really inspired. And I came back after my 2-month sabbatical. And Craig, you can switch the slide. And then I realized Google, whose mission it is to organize and make available all the world's information, had never localized its products in Burmese, and that was kind of upsetting to me because it was such a big country, and given the history of government repression and censorship and sort of authoritarianism, I thought, well, what would be a better antidote to that than providing sort of democratized information, if you will, from Google. So I kind of started networking and talking to people at Google, what does it take to launch a language? Bearing in mind, I have a day job. I'm working on self-driving cars at this point in time, and I know nothing. I'm not like the folks in the room who speak 5 languages, who have a background in this stuff. I have zero background in this, but I'm a little bit scrappy. So Craig, next slide. So the only thing I can liken this to is, you hear about these interview questions where you come to Google and it's like, how many marbles can you fit in a phone booth, right? And so this was like a situational interview question. It's like, okay, you need to translate 50,000 strings of Google search. You don't speak Burmese. You don't know any Burmese speakers. You have no engineering resources. There's all these crazy technical challenges you don't even yet understand, let alone identify. There's this thing called trade sanctions, which is pretty big and kind of can prevent you from launching if you're a big American company or a small American company. You can't pay translators and you don't have your top level domain. Go. So I didn't really know what I was getting into. There were definitely a lot of problems and challenges, but I really felt passionately about this, and I felt like, you know, this is something that Google should absolutely do. Looks like we're on the next slide. That must mean I'm talking too much. So the first thing I started to do was figure out how we're going to translate this. We couldn't work with any of our normal agencies. They didn't have a bench of Burmese speakers. I knew no one who spoke Burmese, and so I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide. So I kind of gradually tried to build a network of people who could translate it. Fortunately, on the engineering side, I got very lucky. I met Craig very early on in the process. And Craig will be getting into this like kind of in detail, but in Burma they use this font that is widely and wildly adopted, and I choose my adjectives or adverbs correctly when I say wildly. It's called Zawgyi, and it's a non-Unicode font, and it is the font that everybody uses, which makes life very, very, very difficult. And Craig built some engineering infrastructure that allows us to not only detect that text, but to convert it. Then we had to do other things like acquire the domain name, which, you know, you can't get it online. There's no payments, no Western or credit card type electronic payment set up in the country at this time. So by way of a proxy, I had to negotiate to get that top level domain. And I actually didn't think I would get it. I thought, you know, they probably didn't want us to launch, but I got it. And it was actually amazing how fast and how easy it was dealing with, you know, what I guess, according to my supposition, should have been a, you know, difficult kind of bureaucratic country to deal with. I actually dealt with more bureaucracy inside the innovative American company for which I work. Craig, you can go to the next slide. Next slide. So this is the org chart of the project. Over here on the right in blue, these are sort of all of the teams that we had to deal with, you know, internally getting approvals from legal and trade compliance. And thankfully, I met Craig on the engineering side. The emerging markets team was very supportive. I recruited and found a bunch of volunteers. Internally, I found a Burmese speaker who helped me manage my translators after I recruited them. Outside partners were equally important. So basically, everybody who did the translation was a volunteer. In the beginning, we couldn't pay them. Subsequently, when we launched Gmail and when we launched Google News and so forth, we were able to kind of convert our bench of Burmese volunteer translators into paid translators by way of our translation vendor. But it was the Asia Foundation and Digital Democracy that were critical in not only linking me up to those volunteers, but also in terms of connecting me to some pretty important and pretty plugged in people inside the country that allowed me to acquire the domain name. So that was, you can go to the next slide, Craig. So critical in this, and I'm not going to belabor this slide because Craig is going to talk about this a lot, but you know, critical in this, there's some really unique things about Burmese. You know, one, we had no keyboard. Craig had to define and build that and build an input method that allows you to basically use any keyboard to type Burmese into Google. The Zawgyi font that I mentioned before, from scratch and on like really short order, Craig created conversion and detection and conversion code, and then built like word segmentation. So that's a big issue with Burmese. It's an unsegmented language. And we've actually, when we launched, we didn't have segmentation. I believe we have it now. We basically build our segmenters by training manually segmented sentences, I believe about 150,000 of them, and basically reverse engineer the segmentation and then have an engine which we can use thereafter. Craig, next slide, please. So how do we do this? We had a lot of people. We had upwards of 50 volunteers that we managed. So these folks were spread across North America, Burma, and Europe. And we had something like 50,000 strings. So we divvied up all of the strings into buckets and created teams. And then the Than Kine, who is my peer on this project and who helped out a lot, and who is Burmese and who is a Burmese Googler and who is no longer at Google, helped tremendously to manage the teams. And we kind of created this like Google spreadsheet, quick, fast, and dirty, like gamified dashboard and then we gave the volunteers, I don't know, we gave them a tablet or something. I don't think we were supposed to. There's all sorts of rules against giving people things, but I felt like it was super important to launch this. And yeah, so we had all these people helping us. They gave names to their team, and we kind of created like a little competition to help smooth this along. So this went really well. Craig, you can go to the next slide. After after the translations and the QC and all that, we got the domain name and basically put all this stuff together, got all the approvals internally, and we launched. And I haven't pulled the numbers in a long time, but basically pretty fast after launch, Burmese dropped from like over 150th in terms of its ranking as a language for query traffic on google.com down to like 50. So that was pretty insane. So so we saw a tremendous amount of uptake and adoption like right out of the gate. Next slide. Yeah, and we did this really fast. I had no idea what I was doing, but in retrospect, I'm still blown away with how fast everybody was able to accomplish this. So kind of by the time I had asked that question, like why isn't search in Burmese? I traveled to Myanmar, recruited the people. First week of January, we had our translation glossaries completed, which was really, really fast. And you can see really into the middle of February, we were done with the translation. So that piece was the piece that I thought would be the hardest, recruiting and managing and then performing all the translations. But that actually took just over a month, and it wasn't that bad. It took a bit while longer to acquire the domain. And then there was like a host of, no pun intended, host of issues with like name servers and so forth, where, we kind of, I won't say we got into it because they were actually really cool and helpful, but the Myanmar Post and telephone or telecoms, they wanted to use their DNS servers. Google has a policy of only using its own. I mean, so, just all of these like tiny little things that could have killed this at any point in time. We worked hard, and we got a little, and we got lucky. Apart from the I-18N specific code, Craig had to do a whole lot of other code, which is required to launch any top-level domain at Google. And that was, that was something I started to kind of project manage him, and then I just realized, okay, just step back. Craig's got this. He's just going to really crank through this. So Craig did a lot more than than what an engineer would do normally in a I-18N role, I-18N type of role. So basically this took just over a quarter. We had over 40 volunteers, 4 partners, 22 plus Googlers. And the thing that I think is absolutely hilarious is it cost $90. I mean, I'm not including our time, but like we paid $90 for the domain name. And basically I had to get my policy guy who was based in Singapore to fly to Myanmar and hand them $90. So that is, no payments. They won't take payments. And there's all sorts of other hilarious things like, they just sent me the password in email to the domain control panel. So I'm like, I'm thinking about what can I put up here? I have google.com.mm. Should I put a picture of my cat? Should I put a political message? And I was like, probably a bad idea. They'll fire me. So I didn't do that. So yeah, it was pretty cool. It was super fun. We had to be very scrappy. We had to meet a lot of people. We worked hard. We got lucky. And I think a lot can still be done to improve Google search in Myanmar. And there are a lot of trends that were just kind of taking off at that time that I think, maybe made web search less important than mobile and that type of thing. But, we launched it. We had the first major U.S. company to really launch anything. They're certainly the first tech company, certainly the first big top-level domain to launch there. And so, I'm super proud of the fact that we did this. And there's a lot more work to do, but this is a great start. And I think that's about all I have. Craig's going to chat about some of the more technical stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. Brian, we know that you have to log off at 8, so we wanted to ask you one thing for sure.
Ask me. I got a few more minutes. I got till like 8:15.
Any questions for Brian before he turns?
I have one that's really burning question. See, Craig's got the T-shirt, but we want to know, Brian, that the Google that's the Google logo up in the upper left corner of your slides.
Yeah. So the T-shirt has a story. A good friend of mine who's no longer at Google. He actually just left, and he's one of the original designers at Google, designed Gmail and so forth. Moved on to Google Ventures and so forth. So he and I were having a beer, and I was telling him about my project, and he thought it was really cool. And I said, well, hey man, could you do like a logo for us? And he was, yeah, sure, no problem. So I got Google translated, kind of phonetically and correctly, and I gave it to him, and he just came up with this like super simple design, which is beautiful. And believe it or not, you can get in trouble for this because the brand people don't want your brand in any other language than English, and so I tried to sell it at the Google store, but they're like, you can't do that. You're not allowed to put the Google logo in a different language. I'm like, well, look at my hundreds of T-shirts that I have. So,
any other questions for Brian? Yes.
Oh, we have. Wait, I got to get her a mic.
Yes.
I got it.
Thank you. So my question would be, seeing that I'm in localization, and I know that it takes a bit of time to pull something off successfully, especially for new languages with the obstacles you describe. Seeing that this took only a quarter and $90, didn't they ask you afterwards to pull that off for other languages too?
They didn't. But yeah, I mean, like literally, I think I just had this sort of beginner's mind about this, right? Like I hadn't done any kind of project like this. I knew nothing about internationalization. I just thought like, yeah, I can figure it out. And so I didn't really know what was realistic or not realistic. And I think just sort of, for me, I've always cared a lot about democracy and civil society and access to information and, kind of people's movements and social justice. And those are things I care about a lot. So for me, when I had my kind of career, like product development and my like aspirations meeting at this crazy intersection, it was like basically turbocharging things. And then after that, I think just organizationally, the group that does the actual physical manages the translators and so forth, they split out of the I-18N group, and they were more what I would call like operational, just in terms of how we structured that here, and less on the kind of product development side. And so I didn't get asked to do that, but I would do that.
Well, I think now you're on tape. Probably someone is going to ask you. So.
Uh-oh.
And
www. Just kidding.
any other questions for Brian?
Right here and then.
Thank you. Were there any competing search engines on the market at the time, and what was their response?
There was, I mean, not other than like the big ones that you know about, like Yahoo and Bing and so forth. There wasn't, to my knowledge, a local search engine at that time. So you also have to keep in mind that when this project got started around December 2012, internet penetration in Myanmar was like 1% of the population, 2%. Now it's pretty far into the double digits, and it's growing by triple digits. But there wasn't, I think, a local competitor, and certainly none of the international players. And there's this, I won't lie, like there's this bias. Like there's two schools of thought, like even inside of Google. I'm just being completely candid and transparent. So basically there's people who are like, this is amazing, this is great, that's so cool. And then there's people who, are like, well, like, how is this going to benefit Google economically and so forth?
Thank you.
Okay, one more over here. Brian can't hear you.
Oh,
There you go.
okay. Oh, just want to know about that logo again. Is it not that Google thing in Burmese? Is not still not?
It's technically an unsanctioned logo. So, but I still have those T-shirts. I never actually got in trouble, but they wouldn't let me sell them at the Google store.
And why the parens in there? Since something in parentheses. That's the L. Oh, interesting.
Microphone.
Yasmin's going to explain.
Yeah, so the green, after the red, green is like, you will say Google only, but you want to sound it like an L sound, so you put the L, Google, something. But to me, I think we can spend, I don't know, my fellow Burmese will agree, we can spell it with the Naupie, instead of the green and L, Google, and another way to spell it. Because, yeah. Maybe you need to make another T-shirt.
I would buy one of both T-shirts, no problem. Okay, we got more customers right here. Are these hands all up for T-shirts, or do you have a question?
We are not giving away
$50
T-shirts.
each.
I'm sorry.
Do you need to go, Brian?
Yeah, I should actually go, but I can take another question if you guys have any.
Is there one more? Over here. Okay. I thought you wanted a T-shirt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that too. So I was wondering, how were you able to pull the entire thing so fast? What's your secret sauce?
I think it was just really a matter of engaging and motivating people who were equally as passionate about the mission, launching Google in Burma. Yeah, and people were excited and motivated and really enthused and energized, and there was the luck of meeting the right people, like Craig, like Don Kine, and then I worked a lot of nights and a lot of weekends because I cared about it. I cared about it so much. So yeah, that was basically it.
Did you do a lot of planning at the beginning?
I didn't do much planning. Basically, it was just hit the ground running and understand what could kill this and let go of what was working. So I did all the recruiting of the translation volunteers, like basically personally, and then I started training them. But then I met Don Kine, and he was out of London, and he had that. So I was like, okay, he has that. I trust him. Let that thing go. Let him run with that. I'll participate. I got to worry about things like getting the domain name. I got to worry about things like letting the policy team launch it. And working with like legal and trade compliance, because at the time, even though the sanctions had been lifted prior to this being started, corporate world, kind of conservative, like you had to kind of make the case. And so I built relationships, and I focused on the things that mattered and all the things that could like basically kill it. And then I let the other people do their thing.
Thank you. That's amazing. Congratulations for.
Thanks.
the whole
Thanks so
thing.
much.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Thank you for joining.
Take care. Bye.
Goodbye. Okay, back to my computer, maybe. There we go. I just wanted to show you, this is Google search. Just to follow up a little bit on Brian's, I think one reason why it went so fast is we didn't know it was going to be hard. And we didn't know it was supposed to be hard. We just did things. Brian came to me and said, I've been doing lots of launches of Google domains and languages. And I said, well, give me the translations. And sure, how hard can it be? And it turns out that not knowing what the challenges were let us make some progress. And we didn't worry. But one additional complication, when you saw that April 2013 launch, my wife and I had committed to going to Turkey 3 weeks at that time, and I was going to be gone when we were launching it. But I insisted that I could get on somewhere in Turkey, and literally in a cave in Cappadocia, I hit the return button to launch Google.com, which was fun. We also found out a few hours later that this part in Google.com, which says, if I can get there, also offered in, was actually mistranslated. You would appreciate this. It also offered in, it shows about the other languages. The translator hadn't quite been trained properly and said, oh, it's just like on sale now. And we quickly had to make that change. Fortunately, that took a few hours rather than a few weeks. But that's where translators would appreciate how tricky this is to do. And this has been going continuously since then. You also saw the virtual keyboard that Brian mentioned that lets people type this language in at least one of the many ways that people do input. So my part of this is to talk about some technical aspects. For those of you who get bored by such things, I don't mind you taking a nap right now. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the Burmese writing system. I don't speak the language. I can't read it. I can't even tell you what the characters or what their sounds are, but I've done some study about this. Burmese writing is one of the more complex writing systems in the world. Not the language itself. I don't know enough about it to say, but the writing system is complicated, but it's been around a long time. About 1,000 years people have been writing this. This is something that's similar. This stone is similar to the Rosetta Stone in the sense that it has 4 languages there. And this is from 1,000 years ago. Many languages are written using this writing system. Burmese is one among them, or the biggest one among them, but many, many other languages are written with this. It has lots of combinations of base characters and diacritics. So base consonant can have vowels that modify it. There are also tone modifiers. It's really kind of tricky. And the bottom, of course, points out what Brian mentioned. It's written without spaces between the words. So to do good things with text processing, we have to work pretty hard. Complex writing system. Well, first of all, Unicode does have code points defining the characters used in the system. There are 33 consonants, 10 vowels, and I put them in another font just to show you that there are other ways of writing them. There are dependent vowels which modify the consonants. So it's a little bit like some languages where you have a base vowel, which is ah, and then you put another one and makes it an E sound or an I sound or an O sound. That's pretty common. Then there are other signs that do things like kill part of the pronunciation, and they're down at the bottom. Then there are other characters. There are medial consonant signs, and they modify. The little dotted things mean they modify the character that they're next to. Some go before, some go after, some go top, some go bottom, some go around, or combinations thereof. They also have their own writing system, or own digits, 10 different digits. There are different punctuation marks, and then the characters can stack. And when you think about writing the code that turns this into written text on the screen or on a piece of paper, it gets a little complicated, but it's actually used. And this isn't just an example I found on the internet of an official document with this writing system, probably typewritten. Modern history of computing in Burmese, I don't know all of it, but Burmese was actually proposed back as early as 1995, more than 20 years ago. And in 1999, it was finally added to Unicode 3.0. 160 characters were added, and not much happened. Why? Who cared? Because the country was closed. They didn't have people coming to international conferences. People didn't go and talk technical to people in Myanmar. Wasn't commercially interested to anybody. But, pardon me? Sanctions would have somewhat of an effect. But in 2005, a company called Maya, which also, it's the name of that stone. That's why it's not a pencil, it's that side of that stone, built a font. They said, nobody's doing this commercially for us. Let's build a company that will make a font. They made a font. They called it Maya. It has substitutions for the characters that make it possible to render these characters in a simple form. But rather than one code point for the Ra, which goes around the characters, they had 8 of them because there are 8 different ways and sizes they have to interact with the other characters. They're wide characters and they're skinny characters. So they needed to have 8 different code points to represent the thing that goes around. And it was possible to make this work on computers. They licensed it for a lot of money at that time, over $100 for a license for this, but it wasn't standard. But they didn't care. A lot of expatriates and a lot of people in the country wanted to use it. In 2006, 2 things happened. Unicode added more characters and defined a lot of the words. And I realize that this isn't showing perfectly well, but they defined the rules about the order in which the characters need to come if you want to do the standard. But another thing happened. Because Maya was trying to make money off of this, people cloned it and mutated it and said, we're going to sell it. And they called it Zawgyi. Zawgyi became a free, Zawgyi? Zawgyi. Pardon my Myanmar. I call it what she said. Anyway, this was developed, it was cloned, and it was modified from the Maya because Maya people said, we're going to sue you if you try to do this. So this was the first of a number of clones that came out, but they gave it away. We don't know exactly who built this. They didn't want to reveal themselves, but it became widely adopted like that among the technical community for Burmese. And it's what happened. It is not Unicode. In 2009, Unicode 5.2 added some more characters and also added support for other languages who use different characters than Burmese does. But, and this is the Unicode. And there's a lot of information here, but the part in green, circled in green, is the part that's used to write the Burmese language itself. The rest of the characters are used for the other languages, other 11 or 12 languages that are commonly using this writing system. And they all fit nicely in the basic Burmese block. Since then, they've added other characters, but this can be used to write 12 different languages. However, that was not adopted widely for the reasons we've talked about before. No company really spent the resources to implement Unicode. Even though, and I want to point out one thing, this character right here, this is that character that goes around the other characters. There's only one of them. It's very efficient. Add one code point, and if your font can adapt to draw it around the wide characters or draw it around the narrow characters, or draw it 3/4 of the way around when you've got another modifier, that one code point is very efficient. However, it makes it really, really complicated for the font and the rendering engine underneath. So nobody really implemented it. It wasn't implemented, and there weren't very many fonts for Unicode. In fact, a grand total of 1 or 2 fonts for Unicode were built and not widely used. And even Android, which is pretty modern, didn't even support the rendering of Unicode until KitKat 4 years ago. Not even 4 years ago. So how did people use it? Well, this Zawgyi thing came about. Now, this is a posting that I got, but when somebody else looks at that web posting with another font that's not Zawgyi, they get something different. So what you see is not what I put on my web page, and vice versa, because Zawgyi and Unicode are close enough to show some of the characters the same, but not quite the same. And so you might say this, which of course means, what's the font? Without understanding what the font is, that's what's going on. So you had something like they had 20 years ago with other computers. If you didn't have a Windows machine and a Windows machine with the same set of fonts and everything, you could get messages garbled. This is exactly what's going on in the internet today between Unicode fonts and the thing I mispronounce is Zawgyi. What is it? It's a font hack. Basically, it says, and this happens a lot, not so much now, but it happened a lot, where people would take a font and they'd say, I don't like that shape of the character for my language. I'm going to change that A to something else. Everything else is the same. I type the same key. It goes into my file, and the computer thinks it's an A, but on the screen, it shows with a different shape. That's exactly what a font hack is. You change the pictures. And that's what Zawgyi is. So you can have the same code, show it one way, it looks fine. Show it another way, it looks completely different. And this is one character in Zawgyi that looks like this, but the same thing in Unicode looks like this. So some of the characters are the same, but a lot of them aren't. And to add to the confusion, the Zawgyi people chose the same range of characters as the Unicode range. And that's right here. So Unicode, this is Zawgyi. They use all the page for Zawgyi. They need those extra characters. So the ones that are outlined in blue below are the 8 positions for the wraparound character Ra. They also move some things around. And in doing this, and adding these extra code points, they wiped out the area that supports the 11 other languages that are written with this. So you can't write Shan and Man and the Karen languages with Zawgyi font. So what did the people who wanted to write those languages do? They hacked Zawgyi. And so they're on the order of 20 or 30 different font hacks out there, and we haven't discovered all of them, I'm sure. But Zawgyi is by far the biggest. Well, what's going on? Zawgyi is now about 90% of the internet. And giving you a little bit of the history for it, Unicode ain't it right now on the internet, even though it's a great way of doing it. It's not a standard. It is just a font hack. If you have the font, it looks right. Why should you care? Some commercial sites use Zawgyi, some commercial sites use Unicode. The vast majority of users, especially on social media, use Zawgyi. Free, widely available, my friends use it. And most people don't know. Zawgyi was thought to be easier to type and easier to use than Unicode. Doesn't have to be that way. We can build smart keyboards for either of them, but that's the impression. So we're dealing with something. Why is it a problem? Well, I don't see what you sent. It's garbled when you display Zawgyi on Unicode and vice versa. The order of the characters in Zawgyi is not defined very well either. You can take 2 characters, 2 numbers, and reverse them and it'll look the same on the screen in Zawgyi, but you do the same thing in Unicode and you go, what the hell? Because all of a sudden that changes. It makes it illegal Unicode. So that means that you don't have just to take one character and replace it with a Unicode character. You have to look at all the possible combinations and basically transform Zawgyi into Unicode, which is ordered and defined very well. Then you can do your text processing on that. So imagine having to match strings in 2 pieces of Zawgyi where people have typed the characters in different order. The bits are in different orders. Visually, they're the same. Underneath, the computer's going, they aren't the same. It's really great for display and print, really terrible for text processing. And I work for a company that at its base is doing text processing. That's what a search is. Complicated, sophisticated searches are text matches. They also have to worry about segmenting words so that we can move things around because we don't always look for housing in Mountain View. We look for apartments in Mountain View, or Mountain View houses, or Mountain View flats. Well, the same thing has to be done in another language, any language, to make things work. Segmentation that Brian talked about, breaking things up into words and moving them around is really important. Spell correction doesn't work for Zawgyi. And they also eat all the other languages, or they eat the other languages' lunch. But the clones are all over the place, so bring in the clones. How do we solve it? Well, the answer is we have to write a detector for it. The detection can't just say, oh, it's labeled as Zawgyi, so is obviously Zawgyi. We actually have to analyze text and make a good guess. It's a statistical guess because some of the Zawgyi is sort of like Unicode, but not all of it. It's sort of like looking at Dutch and seeing, is that like English? Well, yeah, a lot of the words are the same, but short phrases might be exactly the same spellings and mean completely different things, except it's worse than that because the characters get corrupted when you display them in Zawgyi. But the right way of doing it is detect that you have Zawgyi, in my opinion, convert it to Unicode, do your text processing on that, and then deliver it to the user what she or he needs. But I strongly suggest that anyone who uses computers with the Burmese language should use Unicode. Why? Unicode fonts are there. They're free now. Unicode processing is there. Rendering engines can handle this on almost every device now. There's no reason not to use Unicode other than everybody's using the other thing. You also, if you build content on the web, you should not just say, oh, put my text in there and send it out. There's something called web fonts where you say, this text is to be displayed with this font. If you make Unicode text and put a web font associated with it, anybody who uses that will see it displayed properly, even if they have Zawgyi stored in their machine. Now, there are other problems, but these are approaches that can indeed help with this challenge for Zawgyi. I think it's limiting what people can do with the language on the internet. It also is still stomping on other languages. So there aren't very many Mon and Shan and Karen websites out there, but they're really hurt by Zawgyi because Zawgyi makes it impossible for many people to even understand what's going on because of the font. Just briefly, what else Google has done and is doing for Burmese or Myanmar? We built Gmail. Brian led the Gmail charge. We worked with another team and got Gmail. By that point, we were starting to get professional translators. We built the Google Input Tools, which is a way to get web-based keyboards on any website. In any website on your Chrome browser. And we also have them on mobile now. It's called Gboard. We have a public, anybody can use this for free. We are promoting the Unicode standard. We work with the Unicode standard. And we also put in a Zawgyi detector in some of the Unicode standards CLDR data entry to say, don't let Zawgyi into Unicode because it wasn't being checked for. People don't know when they're using Zawgyi versus Unicode because it just looks right on my machine. We were getting we were getting Zawgyi into our databases, both in Google, but also in Unicode. So with the standard, we're trying to do it. We've also launched a manifesto, an FAQ about don't use Zawgyi, and here's why. We also launched Android with the Myanmar interface and Google Translate, which I couldn't tell Yasmin about when I first met her a couple of years ago. It was an IMUG meeting. I met Yasmin. I said, there's something I can't tell you. And that was Google Translate coming out in this language about a month later. And of course, these let people use it. Lots of manufacturers of phones out there are putting Zawgyi on their phones. Why? Because everybody uses it. Some are putting Unicode on there. Some are putting both on there. Some have no idea what to do with it. So because it's confusing, I think the confusion is going to reign out in the technical world there for a while. What about inside Google? Well, I can tell you just a little bit about what's going on. We are detecting Zawgyi. Anybody has a web page that we crawl, we say, is it Zawgyi? If so, we convert it to Unicode. So our internal stuff should be looking at the Unicode for good matches. And we accept both Zawgyi and Unicode in Google Translate. And we are trying to do some things with other languages in that, but it requires us doing a good job detecting Zawgyi and maybe some of these other font encodings. And we're trying to figure out how to work with mobile vendors who are very aggressive about selling to those 50-some million people, and they're very good at it. So many people are online on their phones in Myanmar. Very few of them on laptops or computers. And there's other stuff I can't talk about yet, but maybe you'll ask me back sometime. So, Aaron, that's all. I'll answer questions after Aaron. Do you want a mic like this? And then just the arrow key. Perfect. Is yours.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, so I guess question first, how many people had heard about or have dealt with the encoding issue, I guess, before your job, before coming here? Okay, cool. So it's a little less than half the room. Cool, so I'm gonna be talking about, Craig just talked about a lot about the technical challenges. I'm gonna give some examples from Facebook and what we've experienced, the different challenges, and some of the solutions we've come up with. So I actually have my device from Myanmar. Craig was mentioning there's a lot of manufacturers out there. A lot of them are from China. So this is like a Vivo phone where in the country, this was bought from a shopkeeper who actually I don't think this model had the font already in it, but they sideloaded the Zawgyi font because everyone else's content, everything that's in the Burmese language on the internet, or most stuff, is in the Zawgyi encoding. So in order to see that, you have to have like the sideloaded font. So we discovered this was a big challenge for Facebook. So I think it's the screenshot on the right. So this is from my phone from Myanmar with the Zawgyi font. It's our original Facebook UI on the right with in Unicode Burmese. If you can't read Burmese, it's probably hard to see like the intricacies between the two, but you can see there's some overlap and some weird, the characters are kind of rearranged, but essentially users couldn't completely, or people couldn't completely use our UI. They couldn't understand, some of the things going on because of overlap, or some characters just didn't correctly render. So we were all excited when we had launched Burmese, the locale, on Android, and saw some people adopt it, but we were confused because we didn't see as many people adopt it as we had thought. So we worked on a solution which is offering people who have the Zawgyi encoding an option to see the UI in their language so that they can indicate which encoding is on their device. Because there's all this crazy stuff going on with the phone vendors, it's hard to detect and know which fonts are on the device itself. So we at Facebook, we give the person the ability to choose which font is rendering for them. It's not a perfect solution and not our complete long-term solution, but we felt the need to meet the people who use Facebook where they are now, since most of the people are using the Zawgyi font on their devices. And definitely, and Facebook is used as a platform for free speech, and we didn't want to hinder people's ability to use the platform. So another thing that we worked on was, Craig mentioned, so this is like a Nexus phone from the States. So it's like, it uses Unicode encoding. On the left is a screenshot in Burmese, Zawgyi Burmese from a popular news site. And you can see there's some weird stuff going on where characters aren't combining properly. And this is something Craig kind of hit on. And so what we found is that almost all the content on Facebook and what people are posting right now is in the Zawgyi encoding. So if you're on a Unicode device, when you look at other people's posts, you're not going to be able to actually fully read it, depending on how long the content is and how it's what characters it is. But and so what we did is we wanted to encourage people to who are using Unicode Burmese to be able to continue to use it and actually see other people's posts. So we added a C conversion feature. So on the right is after you click C conversion, we pretty much convert the post. So this was done by one of our engineers, James, in collaboration with Craig and actually a few other folks from Google, where we borrowed the conversion, some of the conversion code. And then we worked on our own detection for determining if the post itself is in the Zawgyi encoding or the Burmese. And then the third kind of challenge or thing we found with the language is a fun one. So registration, super important. In order for people to use Facebook, you have to create an account, you have to log in. Interestingly enough, I learned that in a lot of places in Myanmar, when you get your phone, you go into a shop and they'll like install a lot of the apps for you, and even in some cases create the accounts for you, and you might not even have the login information. And you might not quite understand the concept of account then because you're never exposed to it, so you're never logging in. So you won't know your username or password, but you're on Facebook, you're able to use it. So if you forget your if you get logged out somehow, right? Like how do you get back in? So a lot of people, find a friend who knows how to create an account and creates a new account actually. And also, or pay someone again to create an account for them. So luckily not too many people have to go through this. I mean, a lot of people are familiar with this who are using it, but actually it's changed over time since we've supported both the different encodings for people. More and more people are actually creating their own accounts now, which is really exciting. Yeah, kind of funny. So this is our desktop webpage. You can see it's in Unicode Burmese. It's readable. I think I actually have the Noto font on my device. So it's actually in I think the Noto Myanmar font. So what we found is that there was a lot of people in Myanmar attempting to register for Facebook. And when you look at their name and what names are failing and why are so many different names not passing, you would see those broken characters, kind of like on the first screen where they didn't quite combine. And what we found is that, oh, hey, people were registering in a different encoding. So, the keyboards on their device are in a different encoding. So maybe their name wouldn't quite work because when we check that to validate that and be like, hey, is this correct? Is this a real name? Is it Unicode compliant? It wouldn't pass. So this is something that we we learned about and we corrected for. But it's kind of just an interesting use case or interesting case study. And I think we all work in ITN and localization, and a lot of times the first thing we think about is localizing a UI, making sure they can see, people can see it, people can read it. Of course, the encoding problem adds another layer of that. But even more difficult is the content you're taking from the people who use your app or who use your site. You don't know what you're getting from them. So Craig mentioned the detection and the conversion, which is still very difficult because of all the movement of where characters are. So for the time being, we've let them in, and we're trying to figure out the best solution on converting those and storing those in a better way. Because obviously names are something very sensitive. You don't want to convert that incorrectly. So that's kind of what an interesting kind of lesson in dealing with the language that we've seen. Yeah. So those are just a few demos, and I think now we're on to Q&A.
Okay, Ruzbe's hand went up so fast, I saw it.
Yeah, my question's for you, actually. Internally, now you're storing information in Unicode or a mix of Unicode and Zawgyi?
At the moment, it's mixed. Okay. Yeah, not ideal. I know.
It's scary, but
we're working on it.
I had a question about the on-screen keyboard on the Google page. Did that layout already exist, or were you the creator of that? And then I wonder if there were a keyboard that could directly type into Unicode, and you could have the layout where you could just type into a device, if you think that could help.
That's a good question. The answer to the first one is that there is a layout called, I think, MM3 or Myanmar 3 layout. And that's one of the ones I used. I also built another virtual keyboard, which you can find on Google Input Tools, that's a Maya Zeddy layout. And the layout of the characters is just moving them around. The actual content for both of those is actually Unicode characters. And one of the things about a keyboard is you want people to be able to find the keys, and those were two things I found. I haven't gotten a lot of feedback on other ones. The one we actually have on Android is slightly different. But the important thing about the keyboard is not just that the characters appear when you type them, but some of the characters actually have to be moved around. For example, there's an E vowel, which appears to the left of the base character, but in Unicode has to be stored after the consonant. So people type it first, type the E first, and then the consonant, and we actually have to have some logic in the keyboard to move things around. So originally the keyboards in many cases didn't do that. People thought, oh, I got to think totally differently to type in Unicode, and so hell with Unicode, and didn't use it.
It's kind of getting used. You know, when you ask me to try it out, it's like something you're used to Zawgyi, and it's like you have to type it before, and you know, yeah. So it's easier to use Zawgyi in some.
Yeah, the perception is somewhat real there.
Hi, my name is Zaw. I'm not associated with Zawgyi though. So basically, I have a comment question or solemn suggestion. So Zawgyi is basically a glyph font, and nowadays the people in OS, Windows, Mac OS, and Android, they already have a built-in Unicode. Nowadays, what they do is they remove the Unicode and then they replace with the Zawgyi to make it readable for themselves. So what I can do now is like I can implement a CSS3 in a font face using a Unicode, or I can embed the Unicode font in my app so that I can correctly display the Unicode. So and now I found out that in Facebook, I can only view on a mobile version of the site, and also I have to set the language to Myanmar. But if you can expand it to like broader, you know, the regular site with that, even like change something, convert Unicode or something like that, it will be more better. And so I think that if we can, so the thing is that people, 90% of the people are using the Zawgyi font. So we can let them use, but we when we save at the backend, we can convert it and then save it the Unicode, and then we can display it back correctly. And so so that's what I think. And my suggestion is like people use Facebook and also YouTube and the Blogspot. If we can take care of these 3 sites, we can solve the problem almost 90%. And then that will be like a local news and media will follow suit. So that's what I'm, you know, comment, even a question.
No, thank you. That's good feedback on expanding the conversion feature. And yeah, I agree that there's a lot of powerful players in the room, and it's figuring out how to transition together in that right solution.
I just have one comment on that. We can convert anything that we know is needing conversion. For short segments, many words appear to be legal in both Zawgyi and Unicode, and sometimes detecting them is hard. But for a person's phone, if we could look at each thing a person types in and conclude, yes, over time, this person is using Unicode or using Zawgyi, we could keep that information perhaps. The other tricky thing is, if we're just presenting information, we can then code it and put a web font on there and show you anything. But interacting with a person's keyboard, which is in a different encoding than what's being displayed, has some technical challenges. We're trying, a lot of companies are trying to figure this out, but your suggestion is a good one. We're working on it.
I have a quick question about fonts. So we know that fonts are important for stylistic expression and things like that. And we've seen in other cases, maybe in Southeast Asia, where there have been font hacks in the past. There's been they're kind of now post-font hack, where they're now supporting Unicode, and there's a wider diversity of actual fonts themselves. And maybe I'm hypothesizing maybe that diversity is helping to drive adoption of Unicode. So I'm wondering whether you know what the state is of the actual numbers of fonts that are out there that support Burmese, and whether there's any move towards increasing adoption to making more fonts, and what the state is of the fonts themselves.
I'm not a font expert, but I do have a page that I'm showing you here that shows a bunch of fonts that are almost all Unicode compliant. This is a string that I just got. It's a Burmese Unicode string. I don't know what it says, but putting this in all of these, in most cases, shows it just fine. But it turns out that if you take that same string and paste it into a Zawgyi, of course, it will look funny. Oops. Maybe not. Anyway, so there are lots of fonts. People are building them for Unicode. People are also taking Zawgyi and making different picture shapes for it, so it's a little complicated.
Yeah, just to quickly add, I mean, I've worked on actually Burmese font for a while, just mostly as a QA engineer for a few weeks actually. It's extremely difficult to make a good all Unicode Burmese font. Sorry, Myanmar font, the script. If you want to limit it to Burmese, it's kind of easier, but still pretty hard. So making Unicode fonts is hard, and a lot of people who are actually speakers would have a very hard time to make a font in the Unicode encoding. As opposed to that, making a Zawgyi font would be much easier. Basically, you just draw stuff in the empty slots, adjust the advances somehow, and you're good. So generally, my understanding is, just looking around, it seems that there's now a lot of Zawgyi compatible fonts out there, not as many as Unicode fonts.
Question over here.
So what about we change Unicode to actually perform like Zawgyi instead, and then everyone's happy? I know it takes like 5 years to change Unicode, but there we go.
Any comments on that?
We got any members of Unicode Consortium?
Because of it cannot, display other languages. So I think something is not, not right there. Although, it's easier to use, but I think because it's so convenient and it's already out there, 90% of the people using, so changing the mindset. And then also, I was just doing some research, and it's like maybe something Burmese people were living under the, brutal dictatorship, and they don't want to, right now with the new freedom, they don't want to be forced to change anything.
There have been proposals to make Zawgyi a standard, and I don't think they've gone anywhere because there isn't a standards organization which has adopted Zawgyi. No one has actually come to Unicode and said, we want to add these other characters to Zawgyi or to Unicode. I hope they haven't. But there have been proposals for other encodings of the Burmese language. The Unicode one, for some reason, was chosen to be the way it was. There were experts who thought this was the right thing to do. Zawgyi is going to be out there for a long time. It has some distinct disadvantages for text processing. That's really the hard part. And display is easy, but everything else is hard. So I'm hoping that Unicode will become easier to use and people will start adopting it. And maybe one of those is to have web tools that make it really easy to use Unicode. I think that's what converted a lot of other encodings for Chinese and Japanese and Russian and other languages to use Unicode, because the tools started using Unicode. The programming languages all support Unicode. Everything supports Unicode except for a few font hacks out there. So we can talk more.
So if I can add something, because the question bears on an important point that needs to be understood. Unicode is not a set of rules for each language where they vary it language by language. It is a set of rules and principles that are applied for characters across the entire set. So the idea that you might say, well, for Burmese, we have to do something different because there's another font standard out there that follows different rules to change it for Burmese, doesn't really apply. So the principle here is that Unicode has a set of rules, it adds characters, and if you implement encoding of Unicode, then characters are added as other languages are added. The same tools and rules and principles apply for all of the characters. So just because there's another font standard out there that has chosen a different way to encode things, there isn't room for Unicode to say, well, okay, so we'll follow their guidelines. That's a really important point. And when you talk about having tools that work with Unicode, there are lots of tools that work with Unicode. There may be particular language requirements that are needed, or some extensions that are needed to support particular behaviors that are desired for a particular language. But once you make something work for Unicode, it works for the entire suite of characters, not just for a particular language. And it would be disastrous for the industry if they started saying, well, we'll do things differently. So I'm not sure that everybody understood that. That's an important premise that goes to answer your question.
I want to say something about just the name Zawgyi and Unicode. Zawgyi is a mythical creature. He wears red and red top, and it's like we grew up with Zawgyi and some poetry and some things about Zawgyi. He lives in the mountain and something. It's like a very Burmese thing. So if you say Zawgyi, we all know kind of like Zawgyi. And Unicode is like some English Unicode. So it's like, we felt like it's, something our, in some way, Burmese are, like any other nation, very patriotic and kind of thing. So Zawgyi is our own kind of thing. And Unicode is something maybe like the one that I said, kula, kala, come from the foreign, something that it's been, asking us to use. So I think maybe something like that, like psychologically.
I've heard that people regard Unicode as something foreign. Zawgyi is native Myanmar. And okay, well, I see it something like whether your country uses 50 hertz for your electricity versus 60 hertz, or 120 volts versus 240 volts. Who cares? As long as you can plug things in and make them work. Well, unfortunately, the technical companies represented here have to care about this. And so we build converters, just like you can plug into your 240 volts when you visit another country and you hope your converter works. If it doesn't, you blow up your hairdryer. Or yourself, right? So in some sense, it doesn't matter, but in some sense for us, it matters a lot because we'd like to make it easy for people to come online rather than hard. Anything more? Back here. Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I just wanted to say this. I was really excited for this presentation because I actually grew up speaking Armenian, which is also a long tail language. And Google has had a lot of efforts in the area of bringing Google Translate and a lot of content into Armenian. And as I was growing up, I've seen my parents' generation and my generation transition from the ANSI into Unicode and this really long transition. One of the things that really helped bring up the quality of the content on the internet for in Armenian, and especially translated content, was user-contributed feedback. Was this something that was included in the Google project for Myanmar as well? Google, meaning feedback from users?
Good question. Not that I know. I don't think we had time to consider a lot of feedback when we were first building this. And we do occasionally get comments saying, why don't you support Zawgyi better? And we're working on things like that. I honestly don't want to build everything twice, is one reason why I'm pretty much in favor of Unicode. And I don't want to make our search for this particular language much, much more complicated. So, but I'm glad you mentioned that other languages have encodings that they're using. I'm working with Native American language. I'm working with a language of Bangladesh. And I've worked with other languages around the world that have encodings, and they have text and they want to convert it into the modern Unicode so that they can use it on websites and in their phones when they get fonts in their phones. So this isn't the only place where it's happening. It's just the biggest group of people that I know of that are actively using this.
So it's not as widespread.
Yes.
Do you do continual testing and QA of Myanmar language in particular and other languages as you work on translating Google properties to those languages?
The question is, I think, do we continually test and make sure that we're getting high quality translations? I believe so. I'm not in the translation group myself, but we have filters that check for the encodings to make sure that we're not getting non-Unicode stuff into our systems. We have people giving us feedback. In Google Translate, there's lots of feedback where you can give feedback saying this is a good translation or not, and that also works in Burmese. So there's a lot of quality control. I don't know how much we actually have Burmese speakers looking at our products and our translations, though.
Yeah, so I had one small question. Do you think that there's any way that Unicode and Zawgyi could have like a love child? And, maybe you could make it look a lot like Zawgyi and like get in cahoots with them and make a cute logo that looks like that mythical creature and put it on Google and do something that reflects the culture to convince people.
And then the right name,
I don't know how to answer that question. Any comments? Unfortunately, there's a inappropriate term for a love child that might be applied to such a union. I really don't know what to say. I don't think it's likely to make something useful out of the merger of the two, because Zawgyi is in some sense using a lot of Unicode right now. It's just they changed it enough that it makes it really complicated. It's sort of like an unloved second cousin. And I better not say any more. I want to
on that last question. One thing also that I've noticed. I work with Craig a lot on this Zawgyi material. Is that a lot of is that sometimes people refer to, what font to use? I use Zawgyi, or I use, for example, Padauk, which is a Unicode font, but people refer to I use Padauk. Right, as opposed to I use Unicode, I use Padauk, or I use whatever other Unicode fonts exist. So in terms of marketing, that creating a font with a good name, but that uses the Unicode standard, maybe is a sort of one approach to sort of the marketing aspect.
Yes, and it's important to note, exactly as you said, that Unicode is not a font. Unicode is a system for saying what the bits mean, and then many people can write fonts. So along the left side, you can see that there's a Myanmar 3 and a Padauk and Pangalong and Roboto and a bunch of other fonts that have been written for Unicode, because Unicode is the agreement about what the bits mean. That's all it is. There is no Unicode font that's made by the Unicode Consortium for Zawgyi. But Zawgyi is a font, just like others. It just happens to have different pictures and different rules for combining things. So as Shane points out, maybe we need a better name for a good Unicode font that we're promoting. We kind of like Noto Sans, but there are others that people have done, and there's no reason why you can't use any other Unicode font. We don't care. Just make it so that we can understand what it really means. What the bits mean is what I'm concerned about.
I think Facebook can adopt a font and that'll become the de facto standard.
Hey. I do want to say one thing. If you run into something, if you're interested in this and you're a geek, as I am, and you want to learn more about this, I built a website. It's called Myanmar or Zawgyi-Unicode Test, appspot.com, and you can take things and paste it in there and it'll show up in several different fonts. You can convert Zawgyi to the other thing, and it's actually got some things with other languages. It's not pretty, it's not, I'm not an artist, as you can tell, but it also has some things for a few other languages that are very incomplete there. Use it, send me email, and tell me what you think. It may help you see, is this stuff really in Zawgyi or Unicode? For example, go to Voice of America for Myanmar, and it's all Zawgyi, but you can't tell because they use a web font. You go to British or BBC Myanmar, and it looks the same because they're using a Unicode-based font there, again, a web font. You can tell by pasting it into that top little thing, and if it looks like this with the incomplete characters and so on, it ain't Unicode. But here's the same text being displayed with a different font. So this is a way you can easily see it, and anybody can use this and send an email.
All right. Right now, I'm trying to write in Burmese in Microsoft Office and Chrome or Gmails, as well as on the Facebook. Sometimes there are paragraphs that I just want to copy and paste it onto Facebook. On the Facebook, I have Zawgyi, I think on my Microsoft, I have MM3, I believe. I don't know. It's not Zawgyi because I tried to look at one of the Burmese website and it didn't work. So I downloaded a whole bunch of different fonts. Finally, I found one and I stick with it, right? But I tried to type it onto Microsoft Word and it didn't work. So if it worked, and then if I use it, Fox it didn't work there. So there's some things that it just changed, from like you say, the round thing become the round, the something else.
There's things like these broken characters here. Maybe.
Yeah, some broken characters that you can't see. So it's between like PDF, Words, Facebook. They're driving me crazy right now.
Well, as I pointed out, you can use the website I just mentioned, or other websites, and they will let you test and convert. Look up Zawgyi converters. They will convert into and out of Zawgyi, from Unicode to Zawgyi and vice versa. So there are two things going on. One is what are the bits, and the other thing is what shapes are the characters. But use some of those tools to help. Use some of those tools to help you see what the characters are, and then maybe those converters can help you. There are lots of online resources for this.
Just one more for Google Map. I try to use Burmese language. I have Zawgyi again. Probably that might have been causing the problem that I can't find my route in Burma. Is that true? Is that because of that, or it's just lack of information?
Most likely, Google Maps no comprendo Zawgyi. Google Maps probably does not deal with Zawgyi correctly. As we pointed out, even within Google, we don't have Zawgyi detection and conversion and doing the right thing everywhere. So, but personally, send me an email, give me some examples, and maybe I can help you figure out at least what's going on. I might not be able to fix it, but getting the right fonts installed in your devices may help.
Okay, we're running out of time, but we've got at least one
more plug on in terms of web fonts is if you go to fonts.google.com, as of about 6 months ago, we offer Parauk as a web font that you can just there's this one line of code that you put on your website, and kaboom, you have a Unicode web font. So that's on fonts.google.com. You can use the Unicode web font.
Yeah, there are lots of fonts available for free that you can install. The problem, one of the biggest problems is you can't install fonts on your phone without breaking something. So that's a whole other challenge.
Okay.
We can talk for a little bit afterwards. They're going to kick us out of the room at some point. Joe, did you have any
it
parting
is
thoughts?
time to stop unless somebody has a burning question the whole audience needs to help with. Okay. Well, thank you all. This has been a wide range of fascinating.